and welcome back to another episode of the ABCs of ERP and Beyond, the podcast dedicated to shining the light on the world of ERP and demystifying a highly critical part of running a business. First, let me introduce my co-host as ever, Nirav Shah. Nirav is an expert in the field of ERP implementation with over 20 years experience working with organisations of all sizes and industries. He has a wealth of knowledge to share on all aspects of ERP, from implementation to integration to maintenance and support. But this week we are going to learn about how to avoid missteps or errors when integrating D365 for sales into Business Central. These are lessons learned from various implementations completed by Nirav's team at AdSirius ERP. So with no further ado, Nirav, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Happy to be back on here and talk about, this critical aspect of, integrating your CRM into your ERP. And the two products that we're going to talk about today is the D365 Sales with Business Central. So it's going to be a fun topic, talking about all the things that we did wrong. We don't usually talk about that, but what we learned through doing a few of these, and just want to share that knowledge to the ERP community so they could, avoid some of the things that we had to go through, start preparing for that in advance, right? Managing expectations of these type of integrations are all important points, instead of just, jumping right in, making assumptions, and then, it turns out to be an endless pit of money. So, we just want to, share some of the things that we found through hindsight and postmortems from a few implementations with this integration, and hope that helps other companies embarking in the same journey to think about these things to avoid any type of conflicts and situations, so they don't get caught off guard, essentially. So really fun topic to talk about, Peter, and it was nice, Peter, on an off-topic note, to see you a couple weeks ago when you were out in Chicago. It was a blast. We went out to a Blackhawks game. We kind of perused the city a little bit. Did some fine dining. It was a lot of fun. It was nice seeing you, Peter, in Chicago, and hope you can make another trip out here very, very soon.
Yeah, I had a fantastic time, and I know we had a couple of days together, and I was spoilt very much so when I went over. So thank you. It was a great introduction to Chicago. I didn't want to leave. So, I'm hoping to be back as soon as I can.
Yeah, our Blackhawk tickets were pretty nice, right? I mean, we were over the center ice, right there in the 200 level, first row, and the tickets that we got ended up including some food stipend or whatever. So we were able to take advantage of that. So it was that was a lot of fun. Last time I went to a hockey game was such a long time ago, actually going to a hockey game again, I think I started understanding the sport a little better, and enjoyed your company, especially because you like hockey and you like hockey a lot. So it was fun sitting there watching the hockey game with you, even though the Blackhawks got blown out. Like, it was such a lopsided game, but it was fun catching a game when you're in town.
Yeah, at least they gave a traditional 2023 season display of Blackhawks ice hockey. So they're consistent. At least they were consistent this season.
They were consistent. Yeah. We're hoping they're consistent on the other end of the scale next year. But they were consistent nonetheless. Well, cool. Awesome. I guess with that, let's just get started, if that's all right. So I'm going to be sharing today a presentation that I did at Directions North America about a week or so ago, where I talked about this to a group of partners that attended my session. So just want to recap that, where I did this session, and I think it'd be very nice to kind of put this out there for others to continue to listen to it, especially those that weren't able to make it to Directions North America. So hopefully, again, this is informative to our listeners here. So I'll just go through my PowerPoint, and essentially, you guys already know about me, so I'll just skip through this part of it. But what I'm going to essentially discuss here is some of the 7 lessons that I learned in this implementation. Our team learned is when to integrate D365 sales to Business Central. We talk about process mapping and its issues around that you need to be aware of. Understanding customizations upfront and how customizations could impact your project plan, what coupling is and how coupling is your friend, addressing permission issues. And this is constantly changing and evolving as Microsoft is coming out with additional technologies. Known quirkiness of the integration, it's good to know, and also adding automations. How do you add automations, further automations than what's already there in the integration? So we'll talk about all that, happy to share this information. But before we get started, I kind of want to talk about how we got here, right? There's always been a CRM integration to Business Central and its predecessor NAV. So the CRM integration has come a long way since the NAV integration back in the day. And anyone that knows NAV knows that NAV integration was very, very cumbersome. You had to run processing reports. There's a lot of manual mapping, a lot of reports you had to create, had to have a developer involved to do a lot of that. And, since Business Central, I forgot which version, but I think it was like 14, 15, or 16. They've been improving this connector, the CRM to Business Central connector, and they've been improving it drastically from what it was in the NAV side. They came out introducing the concept of coupling. How do you confront conflicts or issues? What happens with data to the Dataverse? You control. The other benefit here is all the setup of this integration is done inside Business Central, so there's very little setup you got to do in the sales side. So it's all inside BC. So today, what I'm going to basically be showing and talking about is a Business Central SaaS integration, not the on-premise integration. This is the SaaS integration. So you have two SaaS platforms integrated here, which is sales and Business Central platforms. So jumping right into it, our first lesson here, Peter, was you need to understand when is the right time to integrate D365 sales to Business Central, right? And there's probably a better time than others to integrate. And I'll probably say the best time to integrate is when you're not using sales and you're just starting to use Business Central and you need to get onto a CRM system, right? I think that is the perfect opportunity to say, well, let's integrate right out of the gate, because now you can start developing processes around the existing infrastructure where you're not trying to, bend or mold processes of history of how you're using CRM into Business Central, which may not fit perfectly, right? Then you have to do customization and so on and so forth. So the best time, I think, is when you're using, you're jumping on both the solutions for the first time to integrate, because then you can start conforming to those processes. But the other things to consider of when to integrate is high volume of D365 sales transactions. You do a lot of sales quotings, and a lot of those sales quotes you win and they become sales orders. Well, if that's the case, you're kind of doing a lot of double entry, right? You create the quote in CRM, and then you're manually creating the sales order inside Business Central, right? That's a lot of double entry. And at the same time, you have to create the customer in sales, and then you create the customer again in Business Central. You create the items in sales, you create the items in Business Central. There's a lot of that's happening. So, if you want to reduce that and you're doing a high volume of winning quotes, then you may want to consider integrating from to sales into Business Central. The other need is the need to have real-time data, right? Where your sales team, your front office needs to see real time that they are essentially orders are coming in, quotes are coming in, what's pricing, what's invoice detail. So the need of real-time data is important consideration of whether to integrate into sales or Business Central, into Business Central. Cross-functional collaboration, where you have teams in the front office that need access to sales, and you have remote teams that need access to Business Central, right? So each set of users are seeing the same information. That's when you know it's a good time to integrate from sales to Business Central. And when you want to enhance your customer experience, right? Customers should call in either to your sales rep or they'll call into the front office. And you're looking again at the same set of information, right? A single source of truth, looking at one set of information so you can provide that customer with real-time, accurate feedback on what's going on with their order, what's going on with their invoice, right? When are they going to pay, so on and so forth. So these are all important points, of when to integrate to sales from sales into Business Central. Okay. Now the next lesson that I want to kind of walk through here is our lesson learned number 2 is process mapping. Now this is super important, right? Because you're mapping Business Central fields to D365 sales fields. And there's already an automatic mapping there, but there's what we call workflows. So in the workflow, we need to decide what direction we're mapping the data. So are we mapping the data from, for example, sales quotes and orders being created in sales that then pass to Business Central? Or is it going to be a one-way sync, or is it going to be a two-way sync? So if there's an edit that's done in sales, is that edit then going to go back and update the D365 sales environment, right? When customers get created in Business Central, is that going to then send to sales? Or is it always just one directional, right? Meaning that it goes from sales to Business Central and there is no update that goes back, right? So it's really important to understand what that workflow is, that data flow between Business Central and sales is going to be, right? It's going to be bi-directional to and from your integration table. To really identify that up front is an important piece to this whole process, because if that's not done thoroughly and approved by the main key holders who are going to be using this integration, right, you could get masses of data in both systems potentially, because there's so many updates being done back and forth, and there's not one true place that's home to that record, right? And that's the important concept is which system considers that record its home. And when it's a home record, that record needs to be controlled in that home system, right? And when you have, sensitive data like sales orders or sales quotes or payment terms that are moving back and forth between systems, you don't have a true home, and you get a ton of redundancies that happen through both systems, which could cause massive confusion through the integration.
Can you pick and choose which direction for different things? So maybe I only want to create customers in the CRM side and have that push into Business Central, but I want Business Central to be the place where quotes go on, for
Absolutely,
example.
absolutely. You could do quotes to orders. CRM passes to Business Central, and they don't pass back. You could do a bidirectional sales order sync. You could do accounts, products, quotes, orders, payment terms, currency, customer price groups, default BC pricing. All these things could be configured from a workflow perspective and table mapping perspective.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing that you want to do is um, um, you want to make sure if there's fields that are missing, and there's going to be fields that are missing between both the endpoints of the integration, well, then you could look at potentially turning on templates. So just like the standard BC templates that we have out there for customer vendor items, where you could actually add a template to some of those table fields or those tables. So when customers come in from CRM and you need to populate the general product posting group code or the customer posting group code or dimensions, right? Well, you could have the system apply a single template to all the customers that come in, which is really nice, right? You could then further, you're like automating that customer entry process. Okay. So moving on here, lesson 3, understanding customizations up front. This is a biggie, um, especially if customers have been using the CRM for longer than Business Central, right? So they're using their sales environment for much longer. They've done all sorts of customizations to help promote productive remote sales teams, right? So it's important to understand those sales customizations up front. We made a mistake of not really taking a close look at that, and we started integrating and realized that there are these important elements of the CRM side that was not getting passed to Business Central, and those elements in CRM were created due to a customization. And without understanding what those customizations do or how they work in CRM, it makes it very difficult to map and integrate that back into Business Central. So we spent a lot of time through the project, upwards of 40 or 50 hours in some cases of just understanding customizations of what do they do, why do they do it, why does Business Central need that data, right? Versus why can't we just keep it in CRM? So there's a lot of conversations back and forth that we were having with the customer as we were going through this. So some of the issues that we did see from a specific customer was, an account ID customization in D365 sales did not match how new customers got created in BC. So we had to understand that concept and then create some additional fields through the integration to support that data coming into the customer. Ship to address table not exposed in D365 sales. So we had to make sure that, when ship tos were being created in BC, that we were able to get those then created back into the sales environment. Showing number of sales orders in D365 sales from Business Central. They needed to see a consolidated number of orders, ongoing orders for customers. So we tried to, also bring that in. Extended product text in Business Central. So the customer kept their e-commerce product text in the CRM. So when they created that product text in CRM, they wanted to also pass that to Business Central. That was an important point for them because they needed to print that text on different documents. Then we had update D365 sales orders in Business Central. So when the sales orders came in, right, how are we updating them? How are we putting them directly in release status versus open status? So a lot of those different things were important to understand. And they, in essence, were roadblocks in our integration because we could not move forward and complete the integration until some of these pieces were in place because it was important on the CRM side and it was also important on the Business Central side. So, it's really, you really need to understand this concept. A few other things that we did that I didn't list here is serial numbers. This specific customer did a lot of things with service and how they service customers. So we had to show serial numbers back into CRM. So what we did there is essentially just created a link to the item ledger entry where the serial number showed only where there was a remaining quantity of greater than 0 directly from the product CRM page. So, things like that are important to understand so you could provide the right functionality in the right place so, the user who needs that gets that information quickly.
Have you found when you've done an integration that maybe something that was a native feature in BC killed a customization that they had in the CRM?
That's a good question, Peter. Um, I haven't found anything yet that killed a customization CRM. I have found the other side of it though, where it's killed a customization in BC, because when they were using BC, they had a customization in for a sales order process, which they already had in the CRM. Because it was already there, it was no longer needed in the Business Central side. So I've seen that. I have not seen the other way, but that's an interesting point. I could see where, a customization could be alleviated, especially if you have a bi-directional sync potentially that's happening for sales orders. Maybe you don't need a customization one or two on the CRM side. So that absolutely could happen. The fourth lesson here is coupling. So coupling is an interesting concept. Coupling is the ability, it's basically a flag in Business Central that identifies whether the Business Central record is coupled to Dataverse. And when I say Dataverse, in this case, it's to the CRM, right? That they're linked together. So there's a screenshot here that shows that there's a flag on like the customer master, item master, vendor master, resource master, right? Whatever tables that could be mapped together, they essentially could be coupled through the Dataverse, and there's that flag there that essentially is set automatically, right? Once the synchronization takes place. But here is the thing. We didn't realize this, but for a customer that we were doing this for, especially at Go Live, we almost got burned because the customer had, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 customer records that we had to couple at cutover and Go Live. And it could take anywhere from 8 to 13 hours to couple all those records. It just doesn't happen very fast. So you have to take that into consideration in your project plan, that this could take time when you're doing your initial coupling. So, and we also noticed while the coupling would run, it errored multiple times during the process. So luckily we had a developer that was doing this and was kind of just checking in and saw that it errored and it restarted. But I recommend to do this one time before go live. Maybe just have a task on your project plan that says, hey, we need to go ahead and just do a synchronization to a sandbox Business Central environment to see how long it's going to take. So you could include that time into your project plan. So you're not caught off guard if it takes longer than you expect, right? I mentioned, we ran into issues with the connection, so it's good to kind of monitor it. Sometimes coupling does not update the source records directly. So sales order amounts are missing, pricing, payment terms, and that has to do with a few things. It has to do with permissions, maybe. Could be doing that the service is down. That's happened a few times, right? And sometimes it just there's some lag time there, right? 2 to 5 minutes, and it won't update, in real time. So just got to be patient with it. So coupling is your friend, right? And you kind of have to understand how to use it because it's not the easiest to troubleshoot sometimes, but once you understand it, you understand how to get past some of your coupling issues.
That's a really interesting point of when you're planning out these kind of projects, you don't think about adding in 13 hours just to sync something. Are there any others during a ERP implementation you can think of? I'm thinking of just an ERP migration, going from some super old system to a new system. Is there any like lag in sync or data migration that you should call out?
Um, yeah. So like if you're ever importing history into the ERP, right? If you're importing 2 years of actually detailed history, yeah, that could take a long time, and you want to make sure you've calculated out how long that's going to take, right? Um, if you're gonna be importing in 500,000 SKUs, right? How long is that gonna take, right? It's not overnight, guys. It takes time. So you want to make sure you have a detail. When you're doing this detailed cutover plan, you're actually also putting the hours it takes for these different entities to get imported in, because that's going to impact your cutover planning essentially. So
Yep.
yeah. Number five, this goes without saying, but permission issues, right? They're propping up everywhere. As soon as Microsoft does a change, we're all used to this. We're going to see a permission issue. We have to go back and change a role, update a permission set or something like that. So we learned the hard way a little bit. Our partner license did not work to set up the integration. So we had to use a customer BC license. So they had to buy a license for us so we could complete the setup and integration. And the Dataverse integration has a security role that also needs to be set in order for users to write back into the Dataverse. Essentially, it's called PRV, right attribute privilege. And this one was interesting because typically this is set by the user who is setting up the integration, and is automatically applied to all the users. But in our case, it didn't get set, so we had to go through user by user and set it on the Dataverse side. So you need to probably also set that up. But permission is, you're going to run into it, and if you do, these are kind of the main things that we've seen so far. There may be others out there, but the biggest one was that the partner license, the delegated partner license, will not work. Even if it's a help desk role, you need to use a customer BC user license. Known quirks of the integration, right? And Peter, I gotta say, I'm really happy with this image. I'm very I'm not very creative when it comes to PowerPoint, and I thought this one like hit a home run on this specific slide. So
How long did it take you to do that?
yeah, it probably took me longer than put together all the slides. So Um, some of the known quirks here are, the sync could take upwards of 2 to 5 minutes, like I mentioned. If you're using items in multiple unit of measures, right? meaning that if you stack something in each, you buy it in cases, you sell it in packs and stuff like that. Turn on the item unit groups because then you could do pricing by item unit of measure in the CRM level, and everything will sync back appropriately. So turn on the item unit groups on the integration and BC. Um, one thing that's a little clunky is customers that merge in sales is a bit clunky to couple. So what I mean by that is, let's say a customer in sales gets bought by another customer, right? Or a bigger customer. So it's easy in sales, CRM sales, to merge customers. It's a little bit more difficult in Business Central. So when that happens, you have to uncouple the customer first, then merge the customer Business Central, and then manually couple that customer back. It just doesn't happen automatically, even if you merge that customer in sales. So kind of keep that in mind. If the customer is not active in sales, it will not couple in BC. So you have to make sure the customer is active, right? The account is active. And sometimes orders get stuck in BC and you can't delete them. Meaning, let's say an order passes through CRM and you are ready to go ahead and you need to delete the order because that was a bad order somebody put in. You can't really delete it if there's issues with some of this underlying source coupling, such as payment terms, such as maybe a customer's missing or there's some sort of mismatch in data. You just can't delete the order. So, we had to have a programmer go behind the scenes and delete that order, which is a little bit, unfortunate, but I'm hoping Microsoft comes out with a better way to delete those bad orphaned, records on the system, but that's what we found to be successful.
It wouldn't be Nav without that, though.
Correct.
It's like
Correct.
tradition.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You can't far too far off the right track. You kind of have to, keep some of those residuals in there. Uh, and the last lesson here is automation, right? Continue to automate, continue to be creative. This integration is only going to get tighter and tighter. Microsoft has kind of got this integration to, like, I want to say 90, 95% tightly connected between sales and Business Central, but there's still more room, right? Things that you may want to look at as Power Apps, Power Automate Flow, right? Writing triggers. If this happens, then this should happen. Create custom apps when necessary. Extending your APIs, Copilot, right? Copilot, we don't know what that holds, but it was funny because I was in sales before this presentation, and there's a Copilot option. I would go into Copilot and sales and say, hey, find me the last. I said, find me the posted sales shipment number for this sales order number for that was in sales, and it didn't go back and query Business Central, but I feel like that will happen eventually. You could type in something in Copilot and it will go in Business Central and go fetch that data. I think it's just a matter of time, right? As you're creating this localized data model for Copilot, and now you have sales data and Business Central data coming together, which I think is going to make Copilot even a lot more powerful. Ultimately, at the end of the day, so. That's adding automations, lesson learned, think about this, don't discount this. This could be a necessary step in a successful integration between D365 sales and Business Central. So that's my, those are the slides that I went through. And at Directions North America, had some positive feedback, but this is all good things for customers if they're trying to embark on this to start understanding now, right? Is there probably things outside of this that I haven't covered? Most likely, yes, right? And be more than happy to add to this or continue the conversation with any of our listeners that have maybe gone through something that's outside of this that maybe we should add on to here and let our listeners know. So I'm really, really excited and glad that we're able to bring this to our podcast.
Yeah, that was really good. There's some standout things for me in there, especially the lag time on syncing this when you're deploying this and integrating it for the first time. Such an oversight. I can see that being a bit of a spanner in the works to the project timelines if you don't factor that in. Another one is that sync direction. I think that's really cool that you can do it, but I think it's really dangerous if you aren't fully aware of how the data is traveling and what can write or what can influence what. So I think that's really a big one for me. And this last one, this is like the fun bit. This is the bit I enjoy. But it's a slippery slope, some of this, right? So, like, it's like, you get a power app, you get a power app, you can have an automate flow. It's the old meme, isn't it? But
Yeah, yeah,
I think here there's a whole treasure trove of what you can do in terms of Power Automate that
yeah,
you might not be able to do with some native automation. And linking to other things, like maybe you want to, when someone, I don't know, does something in D365 sales, that triggers a flow that pings a notification in a Teams channel,
yeah,
or emails a certain person that something's happened, or whatever it happens to be. And we know from Microsoft, these Power Apps and Power Automate, there's so many extra connections, data
yeah,
connections. The world's your oyster when you start getting into this, but
totally.
it's a slippery slope though, because you don't want to. Oh well, that Power App is for when that happens, and that
Yeah,
Power App's for that one customer, that one time they might do something. So it's good, but like, assess your business first of all, and like,
right.
should we really spend some time doing this whole process flow for this one
Hmm.
customer that it would happen every 6 months? Like, is it really worth it?
Right.
But that's me. That's me trying to talk myself into not being too excited about some of the Power Platform stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're exactly right. It's slippery slope, but like I said, this integration is getting better, release by release. Microsoft is, very aware that this is the future, that this is a necessary integration, especially because the Business Central CRM is so abbreviated. It's not as robust as CRM, right? So I could see them, coming out with these bundles and packages saying get Business Central license and get CRM license for free, right? Right now they have an attached license that they're giving. So if you have a Business Central license and you're using sales, well, they're giving you the sales license for $25 per user, right? Versus if you just use sales on its own, it's $95 a user. And then you have a Business Central license. So you could get an attached license here that could help, minimize the cost and get you using a full-blown CRM and taking advantage of sales automations, marketing automations, and things like this. And then integrating that into your Business Central ERP. So I could just see this getting better and better over time. So
Good, thank you. How was it? I was going to ask you in general. How was it presenting directions? Then that must have been a fun
yeah,
experience.
yeah, no, it was really good. It was in San Diego, so beautiful venue, beautiful backdrop out there. Weather was amazing. My session though was like at 6:30 p.m. on a Monday, and and I'm not sure why I was so late, but it was late, and I was kind of bumping up against happy hour, so I'm sure having a drink versus coming to see an integration session, having a drink or a happy hour kind of won here. So it was okay. I still had a pretty good turnout. So like I said, really good feedback, but it was great directions. It's always nice because partners get a chance to network with other partners and see what Microsoft is doing, talk with Microsoft, catch up with old friends. And learn a lot of new functionality that's coming out in the ISV market. So it's really a great ecosystem from that standpoint, and was happy that I attended. It was my first time attending Direction, so I was like a first time attendee. I was like a rookie there. So it was fun. I think next year they're having it in Vegas, so
Okay.
we'll be out in Las Vegas. I think at the Virgin Hotel, which will be fun. So
Speaking again.
possibly, I will think of things that I could contribute back into the community, of maybe things that we go through this year in Business Central implementations that we could, help guide and provide some tips or tricks to others. So
Very good. Thank you, as ever, Nirav. A treasure trove of information. Um, Looking forward to what else we got in the pipeline. I know that we've got so many topics to get through,
yeah,
and it seems as though every time we meet, we had a couple more on.
yeah,
But I know we've got a special guest coming on soon, and we're going to be featuring on someone else's podcast soon. So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, this is really good. So, thank you for that, and until next time,
Absolutely.
take it easy.
All
I
right.
This is the level of presentations that we expect from now on the podcast. So you set the bar high. Hopefully, I
Okay.
never have to do one. So, or
I
maybe
saw
I
your
could. I could bring
PowerPoint.
it back down.
Yeah, yeah. Your PowerPoints are way better than my PowerPoints. So
I don't think so.
I feel mine's are elementary versus yours. So
No, no.
no, excited, and I have to close with this, Peter. You gotta let me close here, because we're
Not a
in San
joke.
Diego doing directions. I gotta say, stay classy, San Diego.
Right, that's it. We're done. I'll see you
All
on the
right,
next
we're done.
episode.
We're done. All right, sounds good.